Well, good evening, everyone, and welcome to West East by Coastal Poets of the Pandemic and Beyond. I love the mystical aspect of what beyond might mean here, at least here out in New England, the very fall, dark coming on weather that we've been having. I'm your host for this evening, Sandra Yannone, but we have four illustrious co-hosts of our series, and that is in no particular order: Carolyne, Wright, Susana Case, and Lynn McGee. Each of us have the pleasure every other month of inviting a special guest reader that is our featured reader. We create these unique constellations as a result of that. And tonight's constellation is no less illustrious and perhaps more illuminating than before. Tonight we'll be graced by the poetry of, and again, in no particular order, David Groff, Indran, Amirthanayagam, Gerald, Wagoner, and Cecilia, Woloch. And again, what I find so marvelous about this particular series is just the magical way that the poets, without knowing what each other are going to read, somehow, some way, that alchemy happens. And so thank you to all of our co-hosts, and thank you to, of course, our featured readers, and of course, thanks to those of you joining us here in our live Zoom studio, as I like to call it, as well as those of you who are watching on the recording. We appreciate all of you being with us to use poetry to support, heal, inspire, particularly during some of the most, I find all times are fraught with something. But nevertheless, we are in some particularly fraught times now. I would also like to just remind you all that each of our readers tonight, again, we thank them so much for joining us, will be reading for 12 minutes apiece. Each of our co-hosts will be introducing them individually. And after our featured readers, there will be an open mic. If you are interested in reading in the open mic, feel free to put your name in the chat, and Susana Case will ably add you to our list for this evening.
Actually, Lynn is going to do that.
Oh, Lynn, excuse me. My apologies. It'll be one poem up to one page. Thank you so much. I also invite you all to use the chat if you're here with us in Zoom, and please use it respectfully and enthusiastically, of course. Well, without further ado, I have the beautiful honor of introducing our first poet for this evening, and that is David Groff. I'm honestly beyond grateful to be able to introduce David, the person and the poetry of David Groff, as he shares work from his latest collection from Trio House Press, Live. I always like to say live, because I'm always so used to saying live on the air, but it's live in suspense. But look at that teetering there. Look at the teetering. the word live, live, has its own teeter to it, doesn't it, David?
Yes, it does.
Well, I first met David at the Associated Writing Program's annual conference as he was moderating a panel with mentors of writers lost to AIDS. And honestly, it remains in my memory one of the most significant panels I've ever attended in the decades I've been going to the conference. We also have a student in common, and that has brought us joyously into closer proximity to each other from time to time. David is a poetry citizen and activist beyond compare, and he has taken every call I've offered when I've asked him to read on Cultivating Voices, the other program I host. That's no pressure for you, David, to say yes, by the way. Whether it's for our National Coming Out Day reading, our Poetry Pride Parade reading, or his own new books showcase readings. David brings his perspective on the undulating history that is the LGBTQ plus movement. To say that every encounter I've had with David and his poetry has moved me profoundly is quite honestly an understatement. His poetry is layered with a tenderness and a defiance, not born out of nostalgia, though it may have that tinge, but from the hard-fought work of living in suspense for decades, and particularly those years ravished by HIV and AIDS that tore through his personal and literary communities. His poems take us to the edges of so many things we hold dear in life and sacred in death. One might say that David Groff is the living embodiment of Elizabeth Bishop's hard-earned line, "The art of losing isn't hard to master," tinged with its irony and deeper knowing of the grief it takes to endure to make that kind of poetry line. With David, we teeter perilously and luminously through poem after poem of lives in suspense, suspended in motion, in life, and toward death. In this life with David's transcendent poems, we get to experience a sort of prequel to the afterlife we might dare to imagine if we believe in such a time. David is an accomplished editor, book and publishing consultant, and consummate teacher as a member of the faculty of the City College of New York. His previous collections are Theories of Devolution, which was selected by Mark Doty for the National Poetry Series. His second collection, Clay, and I honestly just lose my breath just thinking about all of these works, was chosen by Michael Waters as the winner of the Louise Bogan Award and published by Trio House Press. His anthologies include Persistent Voices, Poetry for Writers Lost to AIDS, co-edited with Jim Elledge, and the Lambda Literary Award winner, Who's Your Daddy? Gay Writers Celebrate Their Mentors and Forerunners. Again, it is my profound and most humble privilege to introduce you tonight to the ever suspense-filled David Groff. Thank you, David.
Please mute yourselves.
Sandy, wow, thank you. I don't think I could live up to any of that, those generous words today. And I think I need you at my funeral service just to say a few things, and though you can tone it down. Thank you so much, and thank you all for being here. Thank you, Sandy, for that amazing introduction, and for your constant support and communication as a poet and culture worker. I'm really glad to be here tonight, particularly with poets whose work I admire, and with all of you, and to see some familiar faces. I love the idea of being bi-coastal, and that led me to think about reading some poems that are set in specific places, often between the two coasts. So maybe there's some convergence. You'll see a little desert here. You'll see a few other places in America's Midwest, and you'll see my own home area of New York City. Some of the themes and subject matter that Sandy brought up are things I think you may hear a little more subtly in the poems I've chosen tonight. There may be a lot in here about suspense and living, and a little bit less directly about AIDS and HIV, although that certainly infuses and informs the work I do. So those things may ghost through a little more than be directly there. One of the things I learned when I was working on this book was how many bugs were in it. when you start putting your poems together, you realize that there's certain things you didn't know were on your mind or in your taxonomy, and then all of a sudden there they are. So this poem, this first one I'll read, is called Desert Stink Beetle. You who gave your wings for more water, evolving to adhere them to your thorax until you became a shiny black capsule, a desert death reaper, a hearse of a bug, nosing the dirt as if you hunt your glasses, your butt in the sky like a high rider, comically somber, somberly comic. Your exhaust, your line of defense, the 20-inch ray of spray you emit to get the last word, a stink you survive that lets you survive. My darkling, my thick drop of unmooned night. Let me persist as your species, submit my wings to my torso, commit myself to ground, make my diet detritus and shit. Evolve to be unlovely, a black ruby of gloom, a fecal American scarab, behind my earth-ridden face, my breath all bad, my ass in the air, my moon, ready to let it out, ready to take it in. This next poem is in a similar landscape, one that's been introduced to me by my husband Clay, who's joined us today, the American Southwest. This poem is called Photobomb Taos. The sky on the butt side of sunset is a veiny blue, the clouds vapor trailish, but not jet made, probably, below a mountain that looks like a mountain. I don't know its first name or its tails. Its greens go gray with drought and dusk, but still it's strewn with glare, hard to look at, a lung-busting climb. Trees like brandy snifters dot the plain, vases in a cemetery with flat plaques. Did they know to grow here, or who punched in seeds to snare the dirt? Ebbing from them to me is grass, darkening, like a wave of dishwater, like a baby's hair as she grows up. But some clumps gather dirty gold, baskets for me to fill or burn. After them, at the toes of my keds, a shadow interrupts us from the west. Shadow, the sun's dead end. It echoes the mass of mountain, messing up the postcardy view like a starved coyote or a sundial. I know that shadow's name. This next poem is a Midwestern poem. You can't tell here, but it's set in Minnesota. And it imagines a scene that I could have encountered. It's called Dead Deer. Bolt, thwarted vault, late break, gasp of impact, tembler of thud, the beast drops on the blade of hood. Ribs rip up from their roots, hearts seize, the windshield goes dark as an eyelid curtaining to a horizon of blood, black glass laced with lightning. I am hit with wheel, steel, dough, embracing me backward as speed crushes me forward into a bursting hug, sternums to spines. Past last words, no extra second to follow the plan to tell God I am sorry. No foxhole repentance, no appeal to the fate maker, my sentence incomplete, a fragment, a run-on. No scenes spun out so fast that the brain convulses with conclusion and love. I do not even think of you, give no torn word for you to live by. I mesh corpse into carcass. I am dead, dear. I leave you my velocity, and there at the edge of the road, I give you my fawn. Thank you. I'm going to move ahead to another poem here. being mindful of time. So give me just a second to scroll to it. This poem is actually set in New York City, and it's called Days of 1986. And the Days of is a repeating thing in Live in Suspense in titles of poems, sort of commandeered from Kavafi. Days of 1986. My suspect blood. Dr. Soroti filled a vial. I had to take myself down the grim avenue to the Board of Health in the cold spring evening, crosswalk after crosswalk, as the sun sidled in. I saw hundreds of others like me bearing their blood, but inside their bodies. The vial, I wanted to pluck it from my backpack and prop it on the top of a payphone or stash it in the trash can with the dead daily news, wanting no news, not even good news, all news cleaving me from my brothers. But I kept taking steps, the street annoying with life, the sun incumbent, the storefronts bloody gold, until I had to enter the Board of Health to find an unguarded tray of vials and place mine among them, all of us numbered, together in our before. I went back into a city vital with night, the world a blade so cutting that at times I could feel. I'm going to read just a couple more. I was lucky to get a little residency here in New York. The number of us had a day-long residency called Poets Afloat, which basically put us on many of the boats in New York Harbor. And I discovered from that the evidence of a creature. I was on a kind of cargo freight boat that I never heard before, called gribbles or shipworms, which are basically sea termites, although they're a different species. And the idea of what gribbles, again, bugs, sort of bugs, kind of grabbed me. And I kind of thought a lot about what they might do. Gribbles. What you do to driftwood, eating the strayed freight of trees, doing what salt does, or the tide's task, you do to my boat. Shipworms, termites of the sea, isopods gnawing at the hull, 1/25th of an inch of mouth and execution, grateful as worms can be to swell your multitudes. Advancing your cause within barges, pilings, and boats, passport and transport. I enable your damage, my travel, my craft's undoing. I raise my boat to dry dock and scrape it of you, being I can't look in the eye as you rise from the water and die. You minute raindrops of sun, my passengers, my plagues. Even if I make you a decoy, a beam along my keel, give you your tariff, the worm shoe you eat, you still skirt its creosote and open your jaws wider to your hunger the longer I stay away from shore. Go forth and multiply, you golden cancers of my plans. Break me open and down. I'm going to read just one more. I have two poems that are both related to what a friend asked me to do after the death of his brother. And I wrote a long poem about it you can find in the book called A Boy's Own Heaven. But this is a shorter one, and it seems like a place to end on. A friend asks me to pray for the soul of his dead brother. The flying cricket in a frenzy of chirps sketches my halo. Maybe it harps on me as the mate it aches for, or else I hinder desire. It blurs like a hand making the sign of the cross, too fast and too long. Finished, it spins off into September cold, a thread, an echo. Thank you very much. Thank you.
That was wonderful, David. Thank you so much.
you.
I had the pleasure of hearing you read this past summer at the Gowanus reading, and it was so nice to hear more. It was wonderful to hear more. So we're now going to turn to the second reader tonight, this Indran Amirthanayagam, originally from Sri Lanka, or although he will say Ceylon. Truly an international phenomenon as a poet, 23 books. That's quite impressive. Not only does he work as a poet, but also as an editor, columnist, publisher, translator, musician, and in many other ways. That is, he wears lots of hats, even though I notice he's not wearing a hat tonight. And usually I have noticed he does during readings. I am a student of foreign language, and so I admire and I also envy his ability to write in, there goes the hat, in English, Spanish, French, Portuguese, and Haitian Creole. And I am proud to be a pressmate of his at Broadstone Books, which published one of his books centered on the last election and Whitman. Indran's work is often political, but it is also diaristic in terms of the details of his own life, his mother's failing health, unrequited love, for example. When asked by Jonathan Harrington how he could be so prolific, Indran responded, this is a quote from him, "I write when I wake up with my coffee after lunch in the middle of the afternoon siesta. I force myself awake and I run hungry and bug-eyed to the laptop. Seriously, I write sometimes several poems a day." You'd have to have 23 books, I think, sometimes not. "I think the best time is late at night or early in the morning before the rest of the house and the world wakes up." So in Poet of the Port, his latest book, which in Creole, and I hope I'm pronouncing this right, is Conte Enlèvement, Indran is poised to leave Haiti, a country he worked in for years and has a very firm emotional attachment to. But as always, he is a migrant, a central theme in his work there, here, and wherever else he may choose to hang his hat. Indran.
Thank you so much, Susana. You know, what a beautiful introduction. I'm very grateful. I must make a comment that I no longer write with such ferocity every day. I just don't. I just spent 4 days without writing a poem. And that's a fairly long time for somebody who would write several poems a day. And also, it's not the number, obviously, but the number does. It's just because I'm writing in different languages, so I have different books. And then actually the title of this book in Creole is Poet Nan Poa, which is the Poet of the Port, right? Conte Enlèvement is actually another book that I've written in Creole, which is not yet published. But anyway, it is a very political title. Conte Enlèvement means against kidnapping. And Poet Nan Poa is a play on this notion of the port of Prince, the port of entry, and the sort of the stevedore or the circus buck or the poet at the port of entry and what he or she observes. Again, thank you. I'll recite a few of these poems. I'll do the English first and then the Creole. A revolutionary thought overheard. My idea is not complicated, dear foreigner. Haiti is the center of the universe, and Creole the official language for all authorities, United Nations, International Criminal Court, for all kinds of crimes, and Nasser as well, because as you surmise, to fight future wars, we will need codes that not everybody knows, which is why I'm leaving Creole with you, your call as code language to explore space for new commands in war, dearest Haiti, great country, center of my head. Révolution pensée, l'idée moins pas compliquée, mon cher blanc. Haïti se sont l'univers, et puis langue créole, langue officielle pour toute autorité Nations Unies, tribunal criminel international, sous n'importe type crime. Et puis autorité dans ce tout, parce que vous connaissez, pour laguer dans l'avenir, nous prenons besoin code, qui pas tout le monde connaît. C'est pour ça, moi, mettre créole là à disposition ou langue code, langue pour exploration, espace, pour l'ordre laguer, Haïti chéri, vos pays, Mitan Tetman. Manage. I do not want to feel sad thinking of the last family member, last bird, last time I can see a mountain covered with ice. But when you do not write, at least I can compose a poem and for a few minutes visit another world where I know how to manage rain and sun. Egere, when Pavle sentim tris, when Pavle pensait à dernier mam famim, derniers oiseaux, dernière fois moi mon à classe, même les ou pas écrit au moins m'a composé bel poème, pour quelques minutes m'a visité l'autre monde, potem qu'a géré puis contrôler la pluie, avec soleil là. August. Now, this book, August appears in several poems, and also the hat on your head appears in several poems. In Haiti, they say the pays sans chapeau, the country without a hat. Well, you don't want to go to that country because you want to stay alive and kicking on earth, you see. So I keep my hat on my head in a symbolic way to say I'm tied still to the affairs of this human community and animal community and plant community that we share here. And August was the month that I was supposed to leave. So yes, it's a diary, as Susana observed. So August is an arbitrary month. It could have been September, it could have been July. I ended up actually leaving in September. But August took on all kinds of sort of almost spiritual associations for me. And there's an album which you can listen to on Spotify or Apple Music or in the music stores called Rankont Dout, spelled Rankont and then Dout, Dout. Rankont is a Creole for rencontre in French. Dout is a play on Daout, which is month of August. Août en français is August. So you can see Creole and French are closely linked. But of course, there are many other words in Creole that come from West African languages, from Spanish, and also from English. There are words like blockus, for example, is a traffic jam. August has come without a breeze or lightning, without a protest in the streets. We waited for this August since finishing the manuscript, before my leaving for the other side, falling in love with another girl. August can arrive again for somebody else. August means nothing to readers not aware that August has arrived. Then it will go. Bye-bye. See you later. Take my hat. Thank you. I won't read the Creole in every case, just for interest of time, but I'd like to read a few more poems. Meditation under the tree. I think of you at every moment of the day, even if there are others in the world, other wars to fix. It is always like this. Inspiration takes blood, sweat, absolute compromise until love arrives, because we are exhausted from running fast, pressed in the course that life sets. Stop already. Take a breath. We are there, even if in our heads we visited the country without a hat, even if obsession with love flourishes in your poem, because the poet Maudit must write about the flower, wilted, punched, destroyed. Or perhaps one can change themes like a lizard, its skin. I sit in the leaves of the tree. I'm waiting for you. Nobody can see me except you, because I think I see you still. Haitian. Haitian, how are you? You write in our language and you love with our words. You defy despair with a backpack full of proverbs. You dance compa, you sit beside the sea with a rum and a smile in this forgotten island that advances just a little after remembering gulf, pit, and death. Haitian, stick around here with us. Aisia, como nu ye? U ekrin an langwen, ye piure men ak bonu. U defie desespoir ak yon makut plen poveb. U danse compa, u chita bola me ak yon wom, epi yon souris dans zile oubli, qui avance yon tikras, après mémoire gouffre, toi l'amour. Haïtien, rete, c'est là avec nous. Haïtien, rete, c'est là avec nous. So I became a Haitian, I guess, when I landed in Port-au-Prince in 2014. I went to see Marie-Alice Théard, who's a painter and a art gallery owner and a writer. Anyway, Marie-Alice told me when she saw me, it's the first thing she said, I mean, you were born here 500 years ago, you know, and she's known for being a sort of, what's the word, clairvoyant or something. And I did feel that very much at home, and I became friendly with everybody from the chauffeur at the place where I worked, which happened to be the U.S. Embassy, a chauffeur. There were a number, to Frank Etienne, whose painting graces the cover of this book. I mean, the design is by my son Anandan, but he used the painting of Frank, which hangs in Anandan's home. Anyway, I'll read a couple more poems to wrap up. 3 is a good number, so perhaps I'll read 3. And my hat is still on my head, so 3 is good. If I ever write a 2-act play, you'll know I'm on my way out the door. Look, I found in Haiti an island. I've written about that island in French in a book called Sur l'île nostalgique, about the nostalgic island. But I find it also sort of, you know, the world. So this poem is called Universal Island. It's also on the album. Will you give me a discharge? My stay will end, heartbroken, friendships built even so. Belly not big enough to keep all the marvelous food Haiti has fed me. Strong sun this morning, wind up to sweep body and spirit, door open, cemetery full of memories, but always the story of the return, as long as I can walk, and even afterwards in a wheelchair, like so many other Haitians on the flight from Miami to Port-au-Prince. The island song is stronger than me. My father died on the other side. The other side for me is an idea from the Old Testament. Everybody is somebody. Every island is Haiti. In Creole, you say l'autre bord, the other side of the water, you know, and that often means the United States, but it could mean France, it could be any country where you leave to. And I think, I'm not sure how I'm doing on time, maybe 2 more poems. One of the people.
Maybe one more.
One more, okay. Then I'll finish with this one, which I call Tans avocate fini. The avocado season is over, and right now in Haiti it's the season of the avocado. So, and you know, in Haitian avocado is a huge mother of an avocado. You know, it's not the Hass variety or something. It's a huge, like a watermelon. Anyway, Tans avocate fini. I'll read the English and then finish with the Creole. The season of avocados is over. The most beautiful girl in town is about to marry a man across the water. My brother is busy with his manuscript. Time to share ideas in a book has gone to the country without a hat. Accept reality. Don't live anymore in fantasy. You're getting along in years, but are only 3 in Creole. You have a great long life ahead. Think, reflect, tell all the new families congratulations, good luck, then write again about your life in Haiti when the avocado was in bloom. Tans avocate fini. Tans avocate fini. Pi bel fin an villa ap marie ak moun lotbo. frère m'occupé ak manuscrit temps pour partager l'idée nan livre te aller nan pays son chapeau, accepter réalité, pas vie plus nan fantasy, ou gen quelques années men seul toi nan créole, ou gen tout yon vie devant, penser, réfléchir, dit toute nouveau famille, félicitations, bonne chance, et puis écrit l'autre fois, souvi en Haïti, les avocats te fleuris. Les avocats te fleuris. Merci, en pile. Merci beaucoup. Thank you very much. Thank you, Susana, for introducing. Thank you all, Sandy and Lynn, and this wonderful series that unifies Westerners. I wish we could
And
unify
Carol.
the world. Thank you.
Thank you so much, Indran. That was really very tender and quiet, quiet and tender, those poems, I think.
Thank
So,
you.
yeah, they were really lovely. All right, so our next reader, can everyone hear me okay? Okay, wait, let me get ready to screen share. Okay. Our next reader, Gerald Wagoner, is a poet, a sculptor, a community builder and poetry series coordinator, a descendant of pioneers, an advocate of wildness, a poet of the uncanny particular, a believer of backroads and ranches, a champion of the terminally disappointed, a friend of the lyric form, the pantoum and free verse, an inhabitant of Brooklyn, a fan of the Brooklyn Navy Yard, a child of Eastern Oregon and Montana, and a retired public school teacher who is the author of When Nothing Wild Remains. Hold 1 second. Okay, of nothing, where am I? Is the author of When Nothing Wild Remains, released this past September from Broadstone Books. He's my pressmate. And A Month of Someday, published by Indolent Books, also in 2023. His mentors, he says, are the poet Richard Hugo and then the sculptor Richard Stankiewicz. They were both of the same generation as my father and were adopted father figures, Jerry says. In my current poetic life, Michael Broder, Neil Shepard, and Rachel Hoddes come to mind first, and then all of my friends in the poetry world. You are all my teachers. Please welcome Gerald Wagoner. Wait. Jerry, you have to unmute yourself.
Okay, I am now unmuted.
Hey,
Lynn, that was great. That was so funny. I enjoyed that so much. All right, so yes, I am a proponent of wildness, but I'm going to read, and some of the poems I'm choosing echo things or relate to things. I just took a trip west all the way from Montana to Portland and everywhere, and so I will just begin. This is my most Richard Hugo-y poem, I think. Bring your brother, after Richard Hugo. You might return on whim. Bring your brother, not yet born. Exaggerate the lines of perspective. Recall gray rooms that break like clouds in Dutch pictures. The dog you lost that year comes home, his mouth still full of quills. Brings you the old pliers. A new car was never enough to unfence a yard, so you painted the back door the color of August. Found the hardware store with the skulls of 2 bucks on the wall, their locked antlers proof they died of broken hearts. There, the ghosts of leering men hang like winter fog. Artist of Oregon, 1978. I used this to get into the Portland Art Museum for free. It was just too expensive. I didn't want to pay that much money. So they called me. Artist of Oregon, 78. The photo shows him insouciant, standing contrapposto, sporting the grinder he uses to abrade iron and rock into objects he expects will still his continuous disquiet. This snapshot, though, belies his dread that wind-driven sky may return on winter's black horizon. It masks the ferment that wrenches him yet toward mania on the brink of joy. Look at him there, too green to taste how sweet it is to fish the midnight rain and practice the need to fail repeatedly in pelting gloom. He has neither bowed nor quavered long enough beside deep lakes to embrace pale ghosts who coax onto tobacco-toned paper drawings only he can see. There are a number of poems here that are inspired by the Rainbow Cafe, which is a bar in Pendleton, Oregon. And when I was there last time, I sold a copy of my book to the bartender, whose name is actually Zach. Thoreau at the Rainbow Bar. Andy's opened here in 1883, been a pale-faced place ever since. It's no Saturday night at the rodeo, but Wednesday night is edgy. Jack, the bartender, is pouring double shots of straight rye. They all have that same look here. That look I grew up with, a certain tribe of chiseled-faced white people who stuck it out, digging, planting, cutting, tending to the pioneer story. One old cowboy is beefy the way a broad-shouldered steer chews and stares. His old pal is lean and wizened as jerky. It's everything you'd expect from Pendleton's beating heart, but Jack retorts, it's the only thing beating in this town. You allow yourself, though. The rainbow is an oasis from the intensifying phases of a disquieting desperation. Snow Slip Bar and Cafe. The Snow Slip Bar and Cafe no longer exists. There was a terrible murder there, a shooting, and the new owner decided it was so tragic that he must tear the place down. So it just does no longer exist. But I stayed very close to there last month. I miss the Snow Slip Bar and Cafe. Behind double barbed wire fences, the bulk of the tribal bison herd grazes on silence. The rest gaze west toward the Rockies. That late afternoon at Snow Slip, he leaned left arm behind, back against the far end of a short bar, and in Siksika, glass raised, greeted me, friend. I raise horses, thoroughbreds, he said. I have a master's degree, he said. I teach phys ed and Browning. I've been assimilated. I'm Catholic, star school, but I'm not. I'm Pekuni. Did you ever take a sweat? It's good to take a sweat. My boy is 8, he cries, and I hug him. The medicine man said it was the video games. We all took a sweat. My boy is stronger now. You still sometimes make the crow cry? I asked him. We win so much they don't invite us to their games no more, he said. But the Flathead over in Kalispell have all the banners now. I tell the boys, we are the runners, not the Flathead. Have pride. It's summer. My uncle and me, we race horses in the summer. I don't drink. I drank yesterday, I drink today, he said. My wife called me, he said. Come home, she said, I miss you. The boys miss you. The horses need me too. I came home. The door was locked. You know, he said, when we go to the massacre site to pray, the farmer charges us to cross his land. And this one's for, this is Teeth. It's for Stephanie Laterza, who I guess it had a strong image. Teeth. Is unity of image and effect short-lived? In the untamed world, the boy amputates hoppers to toss on a mound of red and black ants solely to see them teem. A dead cow bursts rife with white maggots, bakes to bone-dry hide. It hurts to step on yellow jackets. A black widow spider waits where a cellar dream is simple. His waggly-tailed doggy snarls, gnars, then bares its fangs, lays ears back, morphs in fog to white bear. The boy in shock falls back, then wakes to wet doggy kisses. Yet when they play, the boy cannot forget that canine teeth tear red meat and molars break the bones. Yep. Well, time is going faster than I thought, so I'm going to read the title poem. When Nothing Wild Remains. The board directs you to describe circle by circle how rocks and fossils spill from your notebook in rhythms rarely heard since the death of probity. You reply that amethyst is just silica and cannot heal, hence you know there is nothing that needs curing. You can choose to self-medicate. You tell them with patience how you rearrange needles of black tourmaline relative to the 3-inch Buddha on your bookshelf, while you puzzle over why the crying child on the train proclaimed you must write your notes in the margin of someone else's book. Vexed, you stress the significance of art as being at heart a reactive endeavor executed by unreliable narrators. And then you ask the body to consider what will happen to our places of renewal after the rich buy all the mountains and nothing wild remains. Oh, I've still got 2 minutes, right? We still have 2 minutes?
Oh, I don't know, Jerry. I wasn't watching the clock.
All right, well, I think I'm done.
I bet you. Okay. That was wonderful. Okay. Thank you so much. Yeah, sense of place is for me personally, I love poems with a strong sense of place. They're very powerful for me.
But you're,
Well, I want to thank all the poets so far, David, Indran, and Gerald. And I don't know if you are at all related to another poet who became a poet of the Northwest, David Wagoner.
David Wagoner? No, I don't think I am.
Yeah, that's amazing. Of course, the surname Wright is is rife with poets and writers, and I'm not related to any of them. But I want to thank all of you so far. I'm really pleased to introduce another poet, our final poet of the day. This is interesting that we have, for once, we've had 3 poets of the male identifying persuasion and ending with 1 poet of the female persuasion. It's often sort of reversed, but in any case, that's wonderful. Ladies go last in this case, last but not least, or whatever. I just wanted to say that it's really a pleasure to introduce Cecilia, whom I have known. Now, it's sort of interesting. I had known of Cecilia for quite a while as a poet who at this point is based on the West Coast, the left coast in LA. And we actually had a full-on meeting. I don't know, it was 5 or 6 years ago when Cecilia, you came to Seattle And you were staying with another poet who lives in Seattle, I think Carolyne.
Yep.
Do I
Miss
have that
Caroline.
correct?
Mhm.
Okay. I
Mhm.
also met Carolyne that way. She was also, Carolyne was so wonderful. She would host poets in her beautiful house, overlooking, Puget Sound. Cecilia contacted me and proposed that we get together on a Sunday. And I said, well, I have my wonderful Afro-Brazilian dance class at noon that day in a studio in Lower Fremont. And Cecilia said, oh, I'll come. I love to dance. I said, great. So Cecilia and I met there, and I'd been dancing with them for Daniel and his wife Aileen. Daniel is from Bahia, from Salvador, Bahia, Brazil. And Aileen, his wife, is American, but they're my beloved teachers. So Cecilia and I danced in that class, and it was only an hour and a half. But Cecilia swears it was about 5 hours.
It was not an hour and a half. It was 3 hours, Caroline. I
Maybe-
remember.
Well, afterwards we danced our way kind of through the back lot and up the stairs to the Fremont Coffee House, which is still there. Both of these locations survived the pandemic. And so we sat in the Fremont Coffee House, a funky, I think it was an old farmhouse at one point, but now it's a wonderful coffee shop. And we talked about poetry, poets, and we did some deep dish dives on a poet or two, which we won't talk about right now, but it was like, whoa. In any case, the dance connection, though, is important. It just seems really key because dance inspires both of us. And Cecilia, in particular, through her Sigan heritage. And here's the cover of the book, Sigan. Lynn is going to show it. Yeah, that's a better view than through my Zoom screen. Because it's a wonderful book to read, because this is the second edition. The first edition had a shorter foreword that traced some of what Cecilia knew at the time of her Roma Gypsy ancestry through her paternal grandmother, her father's mother, who had been born in a village in the Carpathians. And that was sort of like, that was all they knew, the Carpathians. And sort of in Central Europe, sort of on the borderlands of Poland and all those other countries in that area. And also, and the fact that there was a mystery that having some kind of ethnic heritage related to the gypsies, the travelers, the Roma, Tsigan, Zigeuner, as it's called in German, all of these, what would you say, terms for this one group of people. And it's interesting that the name of this group is as sort of flexible and dynamic and changeable as the community itself. And so Sigan, the book, which came out in a second edition a few years ago, and this is the one we decided to feature because it's an absolutely fascinating book. It's a passionately rendered celebration of and lament for the Roma or Tsigan people. And for, Cecilia's own evolving understanding and connection with this worldwide community of people who maybe originated in India and traveled throughout, South Asia and maybe into Egypt, which is where we may get the word gypsy. It's all very mysterious, and there's a certain almost cultural uncertainty principle. So if you look at it too closely, it shifts, it changes, it's like shining light on an atom. The atom will change. And so I was just amazed reading this book because it is both a really passionately lyrical evocation of Cecilia's own involvement with this, and also a really heartrending documentary. There's, the poems are interspersed with dates. Here's just one. I'll find one of the early ones. 1498, Germany, Holy Roman Empire, expulsion of gypsies ordered. Then 1547, England, death penalty imposed for any gypsy not leaving the country within a month. So you get all of these, short historical facts about the way this whole community was treated in specific areas in mainly Europe and then later in North America. So I was fascinated with this book, and I wanted to hear Cecilia read from it. And so it's my great pleasure to introduce Cecilia. So take it away, Cecilia, right?
Thank you so much, Carolyne. I'm not muted. I had to mute. I live in a neighborhood where there's lots and lots of dog walking at this time. And so I started to hear the barking and I thought maybe I should mute myself. Thank you, Carolyne. Thank you, David, Indran, Gerald. It's the thing about going last is now my head is so much in other people's sensibilities and poetry that I'm trying to regather myself back into a place for my own work. But I was really struck, Indran, by that exclamation, "You were born here 500 years ago." Because those, are, for me, our origins, our sense of identity, our relationship to different places on the earth, I think it's so mysterious. It's an onion that you can keep unpeeling. I'm a real anti-nationalist. I think a lot of those identities that are based on, nationalist ideology and borders are just completely bogus. So although my identity is completely mixed when it comes to DNA, there's Basque, there's Arabic, there's so many different things. And I think we're probably all like that. You just peel the onion and there are more and more layers. But I'm fascinated by those mysteries, and probably fascinated because as a child, I was surrounded by adults who were keeping the secret about where we had come from. And the most I could get was the Carpathians. And 40, 50 years ago, it's like, what are the Carpathians? Where are they? And I was particularly fascinated by this paternal grandmother who was called Tsiganka, who had some way of disappearing and reappearing. She was probably a kind of shamaness in her village. And I thought the place she came from maybe didn't really exist or no longer existed. So it became kind of my quest to find this place that might not exist. And I did. Really, because of poetry, because of friends, because a network of friends that kept spreading around the world, I found myself in the village where she had been born, or what was left of the village. The village and the Carpathians are between, it's the borderlands between Poland and Ukraine. And from what's been happening in Ukraine for the past couple of years, history, identity, allegiances, borders, it's always been a shifty, mysterious, troublesome area. And in the village where my grandmother was born, there were Brigitte Roma, there were people from the, Ottoman Empire, there were descendants of Tatars, there were Jewish persons, there were people from a tribe described as Wemko, who then identified more as Ukrainian. During World War II, there were so many different partisan groups in the forests that the ground is kind of blood-soaked. I was walking in the forest there once, and I could feel, a friend pointed out to me, the planks underneath the dirt road that had been laid down so that tanks could come through. So it's fascinating to me. And my name, Woloch, means In every language of the world, in every country, it means non-Indigenous person. It means stranger, someone who's not from here. So I made my way to this place, and I didn't find my true home or my, what I found was the source of my own restlessness. And I'm not going to read from Tsigan. I'm sorry, but Tsigan it's a book-length poem, and unless I can read a sort of 15, 20-minute extended piece from it, it just doesn't, it doesn't work for me. So I'm going to read from a new manuscript that includes similar material, I'll say, not yet published, though some of the poems have been published in a chapbook and in journals and magazines. And the title of the manuscript is Little Song for the One Afraid. So I will just read 10 minutes worth of poems from this manuscript. And the first one is called, and you may know that Ukraine comes from, the name of the place basically means the margins, the edge. So this first poem is a prose poem called In the Name of Whatever Country This Is. It's warm here now, and the fields have no names. The fields have no women singing and bending toward them, no men with their backs in the sun. Still, it's warm here, and something might grow. Something might sow itself from the earth of the fields of whatever country this is. Then the ghosts will have something to harvest. The ghosts will have something with which to make bread. Their coats in the forest hanging like mist, their shoes in the river washing away. Then what a feast it might be at last, in the name of the long gone, the ashen dead. Let come the rain and the animals too. Let them be eaten again in the name of the God of whatever country this is, where the fields, almost naked, lie down to flower, where peace, like the mouth of a flower, opens to swallow, be swallowed, the fields. And this is for one of my grandmother's sisters. I never knew my grandmother. She mysteriously disappeared before I was born, but I knew her sisters when they were elderly women, and I called them both Teta. I'm not sure what this word is. It might be a Wemco word, but that's what we call them, Teta. So this is for one particular Teta, and it's called Teta. Teta, it's winter in Pittsburgh again, dark brick city of smokestacks and soot, and we're walking up Broadway Avenue, past billboards and vacant lots, through the slush of snow and cinders as the streetcars slur past, ghosts in our flowered babushkas and shabby coats, shopping bags weighing down our arms. We've brought cans of beets, heads of cabbage, meat ground fresh we'll squeeze into fists. And we don't flinch when the crew cut kids hiss DPs at our backs. We're not ashamed anymore, at last, to have come from nowhere, nothing, dirt. The village you fled as a young girl, gone. The houses burned and the fields you worked into rows of green grown wild again. Once you spooned honey into my mouth because my arms and legs were like sticks, because I itched and wept and wanted more than sweetness to know who I was. But you sighed, no one wants to remember that stuff. How you came to this new country stinking of ship, how you hustled bootleg hooch for cash, your own smooth flesh for a rich man's song, the rich growing thick on the fat of the land, while you buried one child in a pauper's grave, raised two others on blood money, spit, all your sins in a basket too heavy to lift, your body already a heap of grief, the day you slipped in the alley and fell in the garden you'd sown with ground bone, shit, under that slit of tin-washed sky. And then you never stood up again. You shrank to a husk in your narrow bed, blind, but you gripped my hand and sang the old song of the little bird in a language I still don't understand. Dark syllables fluttering just out of reach until you were shadow, whisper, less. Your whole life a ragged story stitched into breath, unstitched again. Teta, we've never been much in this world, although we were many, too many once, the children's children who circled your table, blowing out candles, eyes tilted like yours, our faces the same face all over again, the face of the stranger wherever we turned. My cousin, the Cossack, the Gypsy, the Jew, my cousin, the dark Slav, my cousin, the slave. And we'll never belong to this place where you came with your one suitcase tied with rope, your shape like a shadow risen from earth, some mute root pulled from a meadow where wildflowers blazed in the summer and winter lay down. This is America, Teta. You're dead, and our dying means nothing here. Give me your bags. What was promised me? Nothing. A ring and some salt, rice in the white shoes, music, a doll, the book my mother read to me over and over when I was a child, tigers turning to butter, to milk, an amulet from a boy who carried a knife in his pocket too. Night, I was not promised dawn, stars hooked to sky by my father's hands. Love like a tree I could climb to the top of and then jump down from, or swing from, or fly. Mercies so small I could hide each one inside a flower. Sharp white teeth. A clock made of pearls, each pearl an hour, and the hours numberless. The pink dress that disappeared. Where did it go? And the tiny ballerina spinning and spinning inside a dome. A door that would open and close. No house, no home but the story I've lived toward. Luck running out like a shimmer of wind. 2 buckets full of cold water, wood for a fire, and flame. Little song for the one afraid. Oh, beloved, oh, afraid of the blood-stained dark spot ticking clock, of what has shone in your life like luck, too bright to last. Oh, fortunate, who slipped the licked stones glittering into your pockets, spread your arms, and dreamt your ghost wings would unfurl from your bony shoulders, angel bones, and that the sky would hold you up, and love, a tree from which you swung. O branch, you called your father's name. O bird who sang your mother's song. O little sweeper of the world, whose life inside my life has burned. The story of us I had not been told. We'd come from a country without a name, a country that wasn't a country at all, only a place that had disappeared between the borders, between the wars. I was only told the Carpathians, and that my grandmother, called Maria, meaning both bitter and beloved, sold for a handful of silver, had fled that place as a girl. I imagined her sweeping it up in her skirts as she ran, so that when she turned back There was nothing there. An unsown field, a half-burnt tree, where a house had stood in flames, a whole gone world of ash. And what did it mean to the story of us that she also disappeared? Ghost in the river's mirror, ghost in the wind as it shifted the grass. Not that I needed to name myself anything then, or a map, or a reason to go. I think this will be the last poem. Return. In the year of the poppy, year of the cornflower, year of the wild field of yellow and buttercup, year of the thistle and ox-eyed daisy, in the spring of the year of our Lord, of the train, the engine, the ticket, the map, of the landscape of leaf shadow, willow, white birch, blurring past in the smoke of the burning fields, in the blue mist of evening, the clanging of bells, ringing out for the living, the dead, of the last great war, which is one long war, of the ancient soldier come in his uniform to stand hopefully at the door of the house of no mirrors, swept of ash, in which I was a guest of the dark bread and rain, to ask, have the Germans already left? 60 years after the forests were flushed, of the last of our enemies, last of the partisans of the Holy Republic of mud, of the blood mixed with earth, of the bones of itself, of which no one knows but the trees anymore, of which no one speaks but the child made of grass. I think that's my time. Yeah, Carolyne, thank you very much. Thank you.
Let's unmute ourselves so we can clap for Cecilia and all the
Thank you.
poets.
Thank you so much. Thank you, Cecilia, Gerald, Indran, and David. It was just a marvelous, marvelous reading. Very, very powerful, and very glad to hear everybody. And yeah. And
Yeah,
Cecilia, I love the fact that these are new poems, but they connect. They flow from the same source as the
Don't we all
poems
keep
that
writing the same poems over and over again? You know, somebody, the astrologer Rob Brezhny said, for Scorpios, and I happen to be a Scorpio, but it may just apply to all.
Birthday last
Oh,
week. Happy
yeah.
birthday! Yes.
Thank you. But he said, for Scorpios, treat your obsessions as if they are holy, as if they are direct instructions from God.
Mm.
So
That's
what
great.
else are we going to
Yeah.
do?
Yeah, absolutely,
So,
absolutely.
thank you.
Does this new manuscript have a title, Cecilia?
The manuscript is I'm calling it Little Song for the One Afraid. I'm really, really terrible with titles, and I've
like that.
struggled
Yeah.
with a title for this.
Yeah.
So if somebody has another idea, please send them on.
really, really beautiful work.
I think a little of Federico Garcia Lorca, with the Cante Hondo and
Uh-huh.
just the little song. And also the Chilean poet, singer, theater director, martyr to the first 9/11, Victor Jara. He had the little songs, the cancioncitos,
Mhm.
and so yeah, that's there. There's a lot of resonance in little song.
Thank you. Thank you for
Yeah.
that. Yeah, I like it, but I don't know why I like it. So, so
We're always the last to know. So
yeah,
yeah,
right.
be patient, and you will eventually know.
Yeah.
Thank you. Thank you.
That was really beautiful. I want to also thank David Groff, Indran, Amirthanayagam, Gerald, Wagoner, Cecilia, Woloch, all four of you. And
Yeah.
your work was just really beautiful tonight. Before we go into our open mic, and we just have a couple people reading, I also wanted to thank our Kim Port Parsons and Don Krieger, who help us, who are sort of our tech. We're terrible at tech, but we somehow pull it off. barely each time, but you know, I feel like you guys always are able to jump in with some tips. If you're here the first 15 minutes before we start, it's hilarious. It's really like, anyway. So
Yeah, you saved our Zoom related derrieres today.
yeah, I guess I'll keep the recording going for the open mic.
Yes.
Okay, and then I'll turn the recording off. So just to remind you that we're still being recorded. And so do we just have the two? We have, let me just scroll up to I made a note, Catherine Gonick and Don Krieger. That's it for the open mic. Mervyn, you don't want to read a poem in the open mic? Lisa, nobody else? Meredith, no? Okay, all right. Well, we have two fine accomplished poets in our open mic. They're each going to read one poem. And the first one is Catherine Gonick.
Okay, I'm not muted, right?
No.
Okay. Thanks for the word, Susana. It's deeristic, this one. My stepson in Tel Aviv sends a short video. At night, on a street near his house, neighbors follow as soldiers carry a spent missile as if it were a body. The weapon that landed, killing only itself, is about the size of a man, maybe 6 feet long, one end twisted by impact. It takes 3 men to carry the gray corpse to wherever they are going. I don't know how it is in Hebrew or Arabic, but in English, when we say a body, we know without being told whether the body is dead or alive. Thank you.
Wow.
Yeah, thank you, Catherine. That was really very powerful. So our next open mic reader is Don Krieger.
Thank you. And thanks to the readers. It was really good to be here to hear you. Lament for those held hostage tonight. Tonight Israel lives, sworn to defiance and blood, in fear for her children, shackled by fanatics or dead. Gaza waits breathless, the hell strike to come. Her creatures hide in her ruins, surrounded by innocents. How many would kill me if they knew me? How many would I murder if I could? Which of us is clean? I judge myself without mercy. Yet the brutal cycle we cherish in God's image is beggared by his cruel glory. I am a Jew without hope or faith, yet I can still pray and do. One more time this night, may your death angel pass me by. Leave me whole, your chosen, terrorized and waiting for tomorrow's horrors. If you truly exist and hear, then hear this. You are a beast and unfit. So too your zealots, whatever their name for themselves or you. If I held your might, Almighty God, in that instant I would erase you and your memory from all that is. If you truly exist and care, open the earth and destroy me. For though I claim nothing over Moses, your darling, I claim goodness over you. Surely we would be better off without you. But who, if not you, can stop the madness? Who even wants to? Surely not Israel, whose privilege stands on her armed might and her God-given destiny. Surely not the dispossessed Palestine, whose only strength is destruction. Surely not their Arab kin, whose only gifts are weapons forged for an ancient feud. And surely not America, We whose nuclear bullets hold the world hostage, like those Israeli hostages shackled in Gaza tonight, like those Gaza innocents beggared by Israel's might. That's lament for those held hostage tonight.
Thank you. Carolyne, thank you, Dawn. Do you want to close us out, Carolyne?
Yes. Well, I want to thank both of the, Catherine and Dawn for your very powerful poems related to this current, horror and tragedy occurring in Israel, Gaza, and the West Bank, and Lebanon, and now into Egypt, although Egypt is receiving a lot of people. It's really a horrific, really a horrific situation. And Dawn, I appreciate the way your poem basically echoed that message from that great Rebbe whose name was what, Yeshua von Nazareth. What was his name? Now they call him Jesus. Let the one among you who is without sin cast the first stone, right? Who are we to judge? And yet this horrific, everybody, the violence on both sides, and it's just, it leaves some of us speechless, and others of you who are writing these wonderful poems in response. You got to send your poems to Poets Respond, to Rattle, to any other magazines that are doing poetry that is responding to the news. Heck, send it to the New York Times, send it to the Nation, anywhere that is really interested in what's going on. Well, this has been an extremely powerful reading with poets coming from various corners and regions of this country and the world. And I'm really been very pleased and thankful for the work this evening. And then we have, as you know, this series, it holds 6 readings a year. We meet every other month on usually the second Sunday of the month, unless there's a holiday we have to work around. And so our next event will be on January 14th, unless I'm mistaken, but that is correct. There's been no change to that. And that's a date thinking about the Northwest and my origins here, and as a poet who was a student of Dick Hugo and a colleague of David Wagner's, and friend and colleague and student of Madeline DeFries and any number of other poets who were really of this region of the country. And I am now the west of the West-East bi-coastal poets. Sandy dropped out from under me. She was down there in Olympia, and now I'm just here in Seattle, holding down the Northwest Fort.
I'm bi-coastal though.
You are bi-coastal, yes. And I've lived all over too, but I am so pleased to be here. And so January 14th is our next event. And if I am not mistaken, that will be the 110th birthday of that beloved Northwest poet produced by the state of Kansas, William Stafford.
Yeah.
So if there's any, I'm thinking now that perhaps there's some poet I could invite who has a connection with Stafford, and I'll see what we can do. But
Stafford asking.
Yeah. I mean, he's there are a number of poets whose birth dates I remember. I don't know. He's one of them. So that will be the date of our next event. And we don't have, I think a few slots have been filled, but I have not yet.
Cavalieri.
I'm still waiting to hear back from my January person. I just wrote her again today and reminded her to get back to me, but we're still recording. Just wanted to remind you.
And I have a list of people that I might invite, but since it is the late great William Stafford's birth date that day. I'm going to see what I can do about that. But I hope, I thank you all for coming and hope to see you again in 2 months next year, right? So
Wow.
have a wonderful holiday season. We're having Thanksgiving and then all the holidays that come in December for all these many different religions that human beings follow. And so have a wonderful evening, and we will hopefully see you all again very soon. And meanwhile, keep writing, keep loving and taking care of your beloved people and everybody else who comes within your little sphere. And peace and poetry, right?
Thank you
Thank
all.
you.
Thanks so
Thanks to
much.
all of you. Thank you very
you.
much. Wonderful to be with you. Thanks.
Bye. Good night. Thank you.
Yeah, good night. And I'll be in touch with a few of you separately here. But yeah, it's been really good. Thank you all for your work and
Thank you all.
participation.
Bye-bye.